Zen at the Sharp End. Welcome to the podcast about how to turn difficult people and relationships into your best teachers. I'm Mark Westmackett, a Zen Buddhist teacher, mindfulness teacher, and ex-professional astronomer. This is a podcast to go along with my latest book, Zen and the Art of Dealing with Difficult People, which is out now and available to order in all the usual places. In each episode, we'll be exploring different varieties of people, relationships, and situations that we find irritating, difficult, or painful. Together with a number of Zen friends, I'll be discussing how the practices of Buddhism and mindfulness can help us see our difficult people as troublesome Buddhas, our greatest teachers. This podcast is sponsored by Zen Minded, an online lifestyle store offering you the very best in Japanese craft, incense, and other Zen-inspired home goods. Check it out at www.zenminded.uk. So welcome, Scott. Thanks so much for being willing to come on the podcast.
Thanks a lot. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, I wonder if perhaps you could start us off by telling us a little bit about your background in Buddhist practice, up to this point.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my brother got into Buddhism a long time ago, like 25, 30 years ago. And he was a kind of skate punk, kind of a wild kid. And he married a Chinese woman and went to Tibet and then got interested in Buddhism. And I watched him for a while. I was a little nervous he'd lose his personality when he became a Buddhist, which I think that's a common delusion some of us have. But he didn't. He just became kind of kinder and more compassionate and still kind of punk rock. So he was sending me books for years. And I eventually invited him to go see the Dalai Lama together in LA because I knew he would like it. And I thought, well, I'm curious. I'll check it out. And then as soon as I saw the Dalai Lama, I really wanted what he was having. Because I knew what he went through as a human being is so extraordinarily awful, what happened to him and his people. And yet he had such a positive, good attitude towards life and such an effective way of helping people. So I got into Tibetan Buddhism, very, very kind of pure Tibetan Buddhism. And I studied it for about 22 years. I was invited to become a meditation instructor about 14 years ago. And then also recently I founded an organization called The Skeptic's Path to Enlightenment that tries to take the analytical meditation, this meditation that's a kind of storytelling narrative form of meditation, and adapt it to a secular form where you don't require any of the belief or supernatural aspects of Buddhism that are tricky for some people, like karma and other realms, things like that.
Mm-hmm. So, what's your main practice, would you say?
Well, in the Tibetan Buddhist practice, one of the main, there's three main practices. This lineage is a Mahayana Buddhist practice. So, the main practice is supposed to be generating infinite love and compassion for all beings. And so I'm still working on that. But it's a really nice aspiration, even to want to do it is great. It's very difficult in practice, but nice to try. Mm-hmm. And then there's a grounding for that, which is called the Lam Rim, which is takes the Buddha's teachings and put them in a specific order that they, was developed in India and Tibet, where you contemplate certain topics of analytical meditation. So then those are meditation that is more like a storytelling form of meditation. It's different from the mindfulness meditation, which is more a kind of stabilizing meditation. And those are topics like impermanence, thinking about cause and effect, the preciousness of our life, and so on. And so every day I do a combination of those things where you go through the grounding, you kind of think through all the different Buddhist topics and try to regenerate some feeling, not just the idea, but a feeling in your heart about them. And then, try to generate some love and compassion, a bigger sense of connection to other people. And also this idea of interdependence, what you call emptiness of that I'm not as separate from things as it seems.
Yeah. And so I don't know if in all that, does this sort of concept of difficult people, difficult relationships, applying that kind of teaching to the everyday, in what form does that come up, and how have you encountered that previously?
So this is very interesting. This comes under the topic of patience, which is the opposite of anger. Patience isn't just putting up with stuff in Buddhism. It's actually the opposite of anger. It's like not getting angry. So the really interesting thing about this, when you look at some of the wonderful teachings on this subject, like Shantideva's Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, which is that would be my desert island book. If I had only one
Right.
book I could bring somewhere, that would be the only book I would bring. And in books like that, and the text that it's based on in Indo-Tibetan Buddhism, there's a very interesting approach to difficult people, because it says they're your greatest teacher. That actually those are the people that benefit you the most, which sounds totally ridiculous.
Yeah, like
Um,
intuitively outrageous, right?
no, yeah. But the reason is that, and it's not for everybody, but it's if you do feel like you want to develop infinite compassion, then it means for everybody, not just the people who are nice to you. So if you
Mm.
want to develop patience, they say the best way is to have people that try your patience. So it's a little hard to wrap your mind around. When you do even a little bit, it's quite transformative because there have been times, not always, but there have been times I have actually been able to think that, like, wow, this is
Mm.
a this person is showing me that I have not developed my patience. Like, they're showing me that I still have this seeds of anger, and this
Mm.
is a huge chance to become more patient. And without this difficult person, I wouldn't have that chance. Now, I'm not saying I'm really able to do that. Like, if you watch the Dalai Lama, he's able to do that. You see, like, with
Yeah.
his situation with China and so on. But every once in a while, it's possible,
Yeah,
and
we get a glimmer.
just the idea is very inspiring.
Yeah. We had a chap on a previous podcast who said, just the sort of concept of troublesome Buddhas, if you bring that into your attention, you can kind of like sniff them coming from a distance. You're like, yeah, this is a person. This is going to be a situation where I really going to need to bring to bear all of my practice.
Isn't that interesting though? Because even when it's actually one of the, I think, real great mysteries of life is that as you walk down the street, which actually we do less and less these days, COVID era, but as you walk down the street, you have these instantaneous reactions to people, don't you? Like, you'll see someone, or when you start a new job or something, or meet a new person, sometimes you'll just be like, oh, I don't like that guy.
Yeah.
It's quite strange how we have these, and then it comes to bear fruit, for some reason, from a Buddhist perspective, they say it's karma, that you have some predisposition with this person, and
Mm,
there's secular ways of thinking of that too.
mm. So, I mean, have you got any particular specific examples we could perhaps delve into?
Yeah, well, you asked me to prepare this, so I was thinking about this. The one that was really the most challenging was, I took care of my grandfather for about a decade. At the end of his life, he was, like all, like everyone who's lucky enough to get very old, they need a lot of help. So it was very difficult, actually. It was really hard work. And I was really proud of it too, because it was, I sacrificed a lot and I worked really hard to make the end of his life good.
Mm.
And then after he died, I got sued by a kind of distant relative who sued me because he exhausted all his money taking care of himself.
Gosh.
That's how it works in the U.S. here. um,
Yeah.
so so they were upset because they were hoping to inherit some money.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So they sued me, and the way the law works, it's very much in favor of people suing other people for stealing from old people, whether it's true or not. So
Mm.
it was a nightmare. It was like a 3-year lawsuit, and expensive, um, unjust,
Mm.
um,
Mm.
and and it was that thing they talk about in Buddhism. They say one of the one of the best ways to cultivate this sense of emptiness is to think of a time when you were unjustly accused of something.
Right.
you know,
Okay. There we go.
so I often think of that, like when I'm trying to generate that strong sense of self, that false sense of self. But it was very, very, very difficult, and I was very upset and angry and resentful. And it took really years of practice. And I really worked hard applying these tech. It was quite a battle. It wasn't. This isn't about me like, being so perfect, but it was quite a battle all the time of feeling really angry and frustrated, and then also applying those techniques like over hundreds and hundreds of hours, thinking like, okay, this is a chance to be patient. But then there was also a little more practical part, because, His Holiness the Dalai Lama says, even if you want to be selfish, be intelligently selfish, because even if you want to be selfish, to cherish others is still the way to be happy yourself.
Mm.
So that's what he calls being intelligently selfish, is
I
still your
see.
happiness comes from cherishing others. So I tried all the time to think from their perspective. That's actually what Thich Nhat Hanh, what I really love about Thich Nhat Hanh. He has this great like 2-paragraph teaching in Pieces Every Step. And he says, you don't blame the lettuce for wilting, that you go
Right.
and you figure out what are the causes. And so that helped me a lot with being angry, just thinking, okay, what is this? People have their own point of view, and I try really, I think that's such a great antidote, is trying to think from their perspective, like, okay, there's some cause and effect here. I'm not even sure that actually, when you look at it from the Buddhist perspective, I'm not even sure this really has anything to do with me. I'm just sort of happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time of them wanting their inheritance.
Mm.
Um, so, I thought, from their perspective, of course, like they don't see all of my book. They don't know my personality. They don't know who I am. They have no reason to trust me. There's a lot of circumstantial evidence that looks suspicious. I was the person taking care of him and he ran out of money.
And this is
So,
someone who you didn't know, so you didn't
no,
know
they
at
were
all,
like
really.
distant relatives. Yeah, I didn't
Yeah.
really know them at all.
Mm.
So, and then I really, really worked hard. I also used some nonviolent communication, which is,
Mm.
very, very Buddhist also. And, I had to come and see these people face to face. So I had a lawyer and we agreed to a mediation instead of a lawsuit, which is
Yeah.
good. So you sit down and talk about your problem
Right. Right.
instead of going to court. So that was great. And that took years of kind of patient communication. And then, sitting across the table from these people who made my life miserable and, took away all this money. Um, but I practiced so hard and I had the guidance from my teachers that in that situation, I really was, believe it or not, able to be patient through it
Mm.
and using those techniques of reflection, like from nonviolent communication, like say, okay, what I hear you're saying is, want to, you think the money was not all accounted for. And so here's, here's 500 pages, here's every single transaction over 10 years.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
go look through them and see if you can find anything.
Gosh. Yeah.
Um, but it was a nightmare. It took years. But we did end up settling, it was just nothing. We just parted ways and,
Mm.
ended up settling. It worked out, but it was very, very hard and painful. And from a Buddhist perspective, yeah, you say good practice. It did help me cultivate patience. But I was a little
So,
surprised that the techniques did work, because I actually wasn't really angry at them when I saw them face to face. I thought, yeah, there is a reason they have all these feelings. It's just a different point of view and a different source of information.
so it sounds like there was this wonderful opportunity to be able to practice for a period of time before actually meeting them face to face. Like they had presented you with this situation, you were able to sort of, in your own time, go away and really kind of work on it, as you say, and then prepare yourself for that moment where you were able to, where you met them face to face for the first time. I wonder how. Well, I wonder if you had any thoughts about how different it might have been if you'd met them straight away, or if they'd come to you and said to you face to face, "I'm going to sue you."
Oh yeah, I probably would have been more angry, and I mean, and we've all been in that situation too. The thing is, you do. That's the point of meditation, right? Is
Mm.
to prepare, because my venerable Rabina Corton is a nun, Buddhist nun, who I've learned a lot from over the years. And people often ask her that question. It was one of the first things I ever heard her say was someone said, "What do you do when you get angry?" And she said, "Well, that's like
Yeah.
asking, what do you do when you get in a car crash? Like it's too late. It's too late.
Yeah.
Like you
Yeah.
have to prepare. You have to learn how to drive." Right? That's what she says.
Right.
So I think it's nice if you have some preparation. But the thing is, you can prepare. I mean, a lot of us, we know the people we have problems with, so you can prepare in your meditation and as you're walking down the street or on a hike or something like that. But you can also
Mm.
just prepare in general, just imagining anybody doing something annoying to you, which doesn't sound like a very nice meditation. We often think of meditation as just focusing on the breath or something, but
Oh
thinking
yeah,
about
yeah. Okay, arriving at some calm, quiet, blissful state. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
but thinking about someone doing something not nice to you and how you could respond in a patient way is one of the more beneficial meditations you can
So
possibly do.
you would found actually sort of conjuring up that person in your mind's eye, sort of thing, and imagining that situation, sort of playing it through. That was the kind of thing.
Absolutely, yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, and trying to think what could I say that's not inflammatory? It's just being skillful, right? Like, of course you could say like, "You jerk, like I took care of this guy for 10 years and now you want to sue me and take the money he doesn't have." Like I could, but that would not be that would not be helpful.
Right,
Right?
right.
It just doesn't work. Um, so thinking of what's annoying is in movies it does work. You see, we actually get taught when you see movies, often people tell each other off and it works, but I don't think it actually works in real life. Like it doesn't make it so exciting of drama, but
Right, right.
but
Mm.
really, you want to reflect. When someone's really angry, they can't hear anything, and they're going to hear anything you say as negative. So when you get surprised, it used to happen like at work, when I was working at certain places. I remember someone coming in like so angry and fuming. And again, luckily I'd practiced just in general for this kind of
Mm.
situation. And I thought like, oh wow, you seem really angry. You seem really upset. And actually that works. It actually just to reflect and name what's in front of you.
Mm.
Um, this is a little bit more on like the mindfulness track actually, where you just observe what's happening in front of you. Say like, wow, you seem really angry. What's going on for you? And it actually does, start to take the temperature slightly, not to zero, but it
Yeah.
definitely takes the temperature down to just acknowledge that. I wouldn't say it would work always with everybody, but in my own experience, it did, and it helped to de-escalate situations. So, and it's so hard because you have to focus on the other person when they're attacking you, seemingly unjustly. Um, but it's kind of the only really skillful way out, and to eventually get heard yourself is to first like listen.
Mm, mm. So to be aware of the effect that they're having on you, and to sort of redirect your attention away from the kind of like I'm being wronged, or I'm irritated. You're causing me the problem, and it's kind of like redirecting it back towards them and saying, "Oh, look, you feel angry." Mm,
Yeah, yeah, and that's one of the tricks with mindfulness because like for the mindfulness practice, you might be focusing just on your own sensation, like, oh wow, I'm feeling really angry, and there's a purpose to that because um, obviously, if you get carried away with that and let that feeling take control of your speech and your actions, then it'll be a nightmare. But to be really effective, you do need to get beyond yourself, like. I mean, of course, you could always say like, "I need to step away for a minute," like, which is absolutely like that's a really good response too, right? Like,
so
okay,
important.
I'm
Yeah.
I'm actually you can say like, "Whoa, okay, I need a minute to step away. Like, can we come back to this in a half an hour and talk about it? Because I'm getting upset." Like, that's reasonable, and like that's actually a very reasonable approach too.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally
But
agree.
you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
if you can step it up, like with more and more practice, if you can, and it's not denial of your own feelings, right? But if you can step it up to like let your feelings, acknowledge them without letting them take control of you. You don't want that angriness to take control of your speech and body. And then focus on the other person. That's the Mahayana. That's the Mahayana approach. Is that it ends up just working better and actually helping you more. Focusing on the other person actually ends up making you happier and even
Absolutely.
getting your way, even actually resolving the conflict better. Uh, like that's the funny thing about compassion. It's not necessarily just about being a sucker or something like that.
No, that's it.
That's
That's right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it,
So I'd be interested to know how you see. So you spoke about the sort of practice where you bring to mind the person, the situation, you sort of play it through, and see how we can respond in a more compassionate, present way. compared to the mindful approach,
Mm.
where you just mentioned it's about sort of noticing the feelings in the moment at that
Hmm.
time. So how would you see the relationship between those two?
Well, like with the full scope of the Buddha's teachings, like at least the way I've learned them, mindfulness is like a subtopic. It's the ability to stay on an object, right?
Yeah.
It's your ability to remember is one way of saying it. So it's then, but then you have to do something with that remembering. I was actually just reading Why Buddhism is True, which I had never read before, which is a great book. And he also has this comment on mindfulness. He's like, well, it's kind of like stop and smell the roses, like, which is nice,
Huh.
but it's not the greatest advice for when you're in a conflict or something like that,
Right.
or trying to deal with changing your own bad habits in your mind. So like, and also it's like stop and get poked by the thorns, when you're someone's angry at you. So like, but the nice thing about mindfulness is it's self-awareness, because if you're not even self-aware, obviously you can't accomplish anything in life. And
Mm.
I've read a crazy thing a couple years ago that said only about 10% of people are self-aware at all, which
Mm.
means the ability to watch yourself while you're thinking, and have this kind of meta cognition.
Yeah.
So in that sense, a mindfulness is an absolute prerequisite, and I see why it's so popular. Because of course, if you aren't aware of what you're doing, and feel a sense of control, of self-control, of having the choice of whether to just react or to choose how I'm going to respond. So I think that's the benefit of mindfulness. It's like that stabilizing
Mm.
aspect. But
Mm.
mindfulness itself doesn't have an ethical dimension into it.
Right, right,
And
right. So we become aware of what's going on, but it doesn't really help us to decide how to respond
yes,
or what to
yeah,
do
yeah, yeah.
next.
Yeah, and it also
Mm.
doesn't have a wisdom element to it. There are two between, like, these three higher trainings. They say it's ethics, concentration, and wisdom.
Mm.
So if you only have concentration, like, you can concentrate on beating someone up,
Right, right, right.
right? Like, and you
Squeezing
probably
the
do.
trigger as you're looking down the telescope. Yeah.
Yeah, like you
Yeah.
probably are in a perfect state of concentration when you're, in a big fight. Um, but you need the ethical aspect of doing good in the world, and the wisdom aspect of understanding that you aren't separate, and things aren't as separate as you think they are.
Mm. 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 So in the situation with your, this distant relative and
Mm.
things, um, how about those three different elements? How they sort of played into that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, the mindfulness aspect did really help a lot at first, because I was really triggered and angry. And so that actually was a good place to start.
Mm.
Like, just in terms of, like, okay, I'm really angry. It's like, this doesn't feel good. I was talking to my I was talking to my the teacher I'm closest with the other day about anger. And he said, "Well, that one's kind of easy and obvious, because it doesn't feel good to be angry, so you just decide not to be angry." I'm like, well, that is so logical. That is actually really logical. But mindfulness does help give you that base to stand on, where you could make that decision without denial, without spiritual bypass. Like,
Well, that's
accept
the
it.
trick, isn't it? To
Yeah.
decide not to be angry without actually sort of suppressing any of that stuff.
Yeah, yeah, without so it's quite challenging. Tara Brach is really, like, the greatest on this topic that I've heard, because she's like, okay, it might be yours. Like, anger's protective. It's telling you that
Mhm.
is something's important that you need to pay attention to. And it might take you years to get past that anger. But eventually, when you do, then see what it is. Like, there's some need underlying that. Like for me, the need underlying that that situation was kind of to be respected.
Mm.
I think I really wanted to be respected and valued for trying to be kind and
Mm.
compassionate.
Mm.
So it sort of got the opposite of what I wanted. I was being disrespected and blamed for being, like, selfish and whatever, stealing from somebody. It's,
Mm.
like,
Mm.
things, very extreme things. But yeah, I think I had that need to be but it's so nice. You see how it kind of opens your heart just to say that, like,
Yeah.
what's the need underlying that anger? And then that is where mindfulness does really help. Like, That's where you peel away and try to find like the tender, like soft thing underneath the hard
Yeah,
anger.
and that's so hard, isn't it? Especially when things are very, very heated, the emotion temperature is very high, is to still be able to just kind of look underneath and go, where's this coming from?
Yeah,
Mm,
very much.
mm, So we end up in a place where we can be, at some level, thankful for that person for generating the anger, isn't it?
I know it's really it's hard. I mean, even now thinking about it, I don't know if I'm that thankful
Mm,
to
mm,
that
mm.
person. Oh, I guess that's mindfulness. At least I'm mindful enough to realize that.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think
but
it's just so important also, in my view anyway, for people to understand that, even after decades and decades of working on this stuff, and you said hundreds and hundreds of hours of really kind
yeah,
of working, it's still really, really hard.
yeah. But you know what is the lesson I think I took away is that there are these things called the eight worldly dharmas, which I won't list them all. Um, but one of them is like seeking praise and
Oh,
avoiding
yeah.
blame. And
Mhm.
they say these two things are really underlie a lot of our suffering as human beings, and it's hard. So I think that's actually how I'm still benefiting. That is why that is a benefit, because it pointed out to me that I very much suffer from those two things. I really, really do like praise, especially for being a good Buddhist or
Oh,
whatever.
good Buddhist. That
And
old chestnut, yeah.
I really don't like blame, especially being
Mm,
blamed for something very like selfish or illegal, like stealing from my
mm,
grandpa,
mm,
right? Like I
mm,
don't
mm,
like that, and like those, I think those are kind of gifts for my whole life to keep thinking about that until I really can um, accept them as
mm,
um, this showing me that this path to enlightenment is very very challenging, very rewarding, but very challenging. Like what does that, I know what it looks like because I can see it in my teachers and people like the Dalai Lama. It's
mm,
extraordinary to see someone who's not stuck with those these suffering aspects of even good deeds, because
mm.
it turns good deeds into suffering when I need to be recognized for it and praised and so on. So it's very nice, that idea of um, doing things just because they're good, even if you're going to get blamed and attacked for them, still doing them.
Right, right. So I wonder if perhaps you had any other sort of more common or garden examples of people that you've, like in your life.
Well, what I thought of, which actually is I think it's maybe very true for a lot of us. It's like, who do we each have the most conflict with? Is sometimes the people closest to us.
Yeah.
Like I know with myself, me, and me and my wife, who I love, who's like the person who loves me the most in the world, and vice versa. Um, but we have conflicts, we have a fair, maybe we have the most conflict of anybody in my life.
Mm,
So that's really confusing, isn't it? Because you chose this person, we chose each other, and we're so committed to each other. Um, and again, I was talking to my main teacher the other day about this too, and he was saying, nobody, we don't mean. Isn't it odd how it works that we don't mean to hurt each other? That it's just we do things, and one person does something, the other one it just doesn't like it for some reason. And my wife's not doing anything to annoy me deliberately, and
mm.
I'm not doing anything to annoy her deliberately. Absolutely not. There's definitely no ill intent. And yet there it is, like we annoy each
Right.
other, and we like get angry at each other sometimes, and we get in little fights sometimes. So I think that is a pretty extraordinary point to think about, because I think it's kind of the basis of all conflicts. That very, very rarely does anybody deliberately choose you to, go harm you for some
Mm,
reason. It's just that we see things differently. We just have different points of view, different predispositions, from whatever our genetics, our upbringing, the media, and so on, karma, if you believe in that.
mm,
And then something, and our parents, especially the way we were raised. And so like, one person might feel loved if they're very criticized, like their parents were very critical. So then, like,
Yeah,
they see criticism as love, and then another person might see, praise as love or something like
that's
that. So
right.
it's as
Yeah, yeah,
simple as
yeah.
that. Like, we just started to associate good feelings with a certain type of behavior, bad feelings with a certain type of behavior, and then when other people do them, it just triggers these burnt-in pathways in our brain. So I think realizing that, and that's part of the emptiness, is just realizing that everything anybody does is subject to interpretation. Like, for one person, this would make them so happy and feel so loved. For the other person, they would feel like awful and rejected with the exact same words, the exact same action, the exact same facial expressions. So I think,
Mm.
I would guess a lot of people have the same challenge, that, their intimate relationship is sometimes
Mm.
the one where they have a lot of conflict, or even the most
Yeah.
conflict.
Yeah.
So,
So my Zen teacher has used this analogy, and I wrote about it a
yeah.
bit in the book, about them being in basically a rock tumbler.
Oh, yeah,
So
yeah.
you have two rocks, and you sort of turn the handle, and they're banging around inside this tumbler. They start off all sharp and jagged, and as they bang off each other, that is what polishes them, and they end up hopefully coming out beautiful,
Mm,
smooth jewels. And I always find that's a very powerful image, because similarly, me and my wife also exactly the same,
mm,
and I kind of often get reminded of this. Yeah, this is the way it's supposed to be.
mm.
It, mm,
Yeah, that's really helpful, and honestly, at least in my own relationship, I think that's true. I think, gradually we do, and they say when you do therapy or look at relationship books and so on, that, we almost deliberately choose a partner like that, who will put our sharpest edges will rub together, so we
mm,
have that opportunity
mm,
to polish them down. That it's actually, very, very that comes back to kind of a Buddhist view. It's actually very, very beneficial to be with a person that, quote, rubs you the wrong way, because that's
that's
the
right.
part of you that needs to be polished. So that analogy, I think, is very, very good, and
Mm,
a very productive, beneficial way of thinking about relationships. That those
mm.
conflicts um, they aren't bad. They're actually,
No. They can be some of our most beautiful
yeah.
times, isn't it? When we start to learn so much about ourselves, and then we get the opportunity within that relationship to explore how to maybe respond a bit differently, or sort of evolve gently, and see how each other changes with the relationship. Other Compared to someone maybe you just meet once or twice, where it's like, okay, I didn't do so well. I'll try with a different person, better next time. But if you're in a relationship and it's continuing, then we get to.
Yeah, yeah,
Mm,
it's easy to be your best self, for a little bit. That's why kind of friendships are kind of easy in a lot of way, and quite fun, because
mm.
you can get together and be your best self for a few hours here and then.
Right.
But with your partner, everything comes out. You can't hide it.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. Well. Thank you so much for coming along, and being willing to share some of those very kind of honestly with some difficult situations. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. It's great having this conversation with you, and it gave me a chance to think about, those things again, and how to keep carrying them forward in my life. So I really appreciate it.
If you've enjoyed this podcast, please leave a review and a star rating on whatever platform you use. And do recommend it to others, because we all have difficult people in our lives, and each of them offers us a real opportunity for learning and growth. For more information about my book and what else I offer, head over to my website, markwestmaquette.co.uk. Thanks so much for listening. Bye for now.